All right, welcome to our season finale for the first season of Onshape Learning. Congratulations on making it. Although we have reached the end of the road, I am ready to let go of this first part. In season two, we will highlight specific, design challenges or use cases for Onshape. Hopefully, if you have gone through the entirety of season one, whether binge watching it or watching it a little bit at a time, that you have watched with intent, watched with curiosity, and of course, followed along. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions. This is the first time that this sort of thing has been created. All right, let's dive right in. If you haven't gone to the Trello board, it's just right here, tinyurl.com/onshape-trello. And this Trello will uh, be refined over time. But on the Trello board, there is a link to Google Slides, and that is what we will look at today. All right, so this Google Slides is a compilation of various resources that have been used for getting students up and running. And if you go through the first part, you'll actually recognize a lot of things. You won't recognize this bag tag part, but if you've gone through the first 14 episodes, you should at least be able to make sense of it. We are going to skip on down to towards the end, and let's see, switch views. I don't know if you can switch slide view. Uh, Currently 67, although numbers might change. It says laser cutting and on-shape background. That's where we're going to start in a moment. If you go before that, you'll see some things that are a little bit different from what we covered in the episode, and that's because these are sort of designed with an in-class setting in mind. I really wanted to boil down to the essentials in this first season. Perhaps I'll come back and guide you through some of these more. It's just more practice. Think of it that way. All right, so I am going to switch over to presenting here. And yeah, let's take a look. The overall goal here is to talk through background that now that you've seen what you can do with Onshape and you yourself have done some, this is sort of taking a step back into general ideas and philosophies and advice on how best to use and learn Onshape. All right, so this is going to be done from an approach of what does it mean to make something? How does something go from an idea to a product in your hand? So you can pause and think about it, draw out a map, but I'm going to talk you through the steps. So you come up with an idea, somebody has noticed something, somebody has wondered, maybe sometimes it's the directive of a company, but somebody is tasked to come up with ideas. You want to research to see what's out there. We call that benchmarking to figure out what already exists and what falls short. Then you develop the design and test it, go back and forth and start over, all these things. Then you have this first proof of concept. When we prototype, we're answering questions. So a prototype might just speak to the raw function of it. It might speak to the aesthetics and the feel of it. It might speak to the interaction. So think of the first iPhone and how you can test a lot of how people will interact with the menus with just paper and pencil. All different ways to test it out. That's that first half, the upper half. And then the bottom half is designed for manufacturing. You have this initial prototypes that work, but how do you make it millions? How do you make millions of them? But for the masses and business wise, that means for a profit. So the cost of goods, the cost of labor, the cost of machines, how do you get it at a point that people, the consumers, are willing to pay for it and that it returns a profit to companies? And that's just sort of the fact of life. Some people might not feel that they want to invest their time in that, for instance. Other people might be fine, but that's just how our modern world works. Now, of course, you can apply these concepts to a context that's not for this, but if you're sort of just living everyday life, a lot of stuff that you interact with goes through this process. Anyways, design for manufacturing, what does that mean? And this is actually taken, I should probably put a reference here, from I believe, Ishikawa fishbone diagram. In the 80s, companies in Japan were really good at trying to become more efficient with their manufacturing process. Quality was a huge keyword. And they talk about how when you're looking at a system of manufacturing, uh, these are different aspects of it. And because these are different aspects, this is where things can break down. It could be the material that you use. It could be the machines that are creating the things. It could be the methods, the procedures, and it could be the actual makers, right? The people that are doing things. All right, so that's a big overall background. Like many things here, it could be a whole other conversation. And with that backdrop, we think about computer numerical control, or CNC for short. So this was developed around the 40s and 50s, and the idea here was that you would design something on the computer. Then that design would be converted or created into code, and that would instruct the computer to then instruct the machine to do the thing for you. So a good analogy is thinking about the printing press as a technology, and then transitioning to a printer that would print it out for you. Um, People designed the hardware and the software so that you could type out things on a keyboard. I guess with a typewriter, you would type and right away it would create the letters. But with a computer and a printer, you would type up whatever document and it would figure out how to make that show up as ink on a piece of paper. So your normal paper printer, that's an example of a CNC machine. And CNC machines, all right, that's how modern manufacturing is done. In other words, any product or system that you buy. That's why we had that little background slide previously. Okay, so with that, this is just an example of one type of CNC machine, laser cutting. You see this animated GIF. Generally speaking, you have cutting, which is all the way through, etching, not quite all the way through, and then engraving. And I'm not going to get into laser cutting because that's not really the purpose of this part, but I'll just sort of talk through it because that's one way to contextualize Onshape. Okay, so what can you laser cut? It really depends on the power of the laser, but usually up to a quarter inch, maybe half an inch, and particular materials. All right, I'm just going to skip over that. This here is a 4-step process that really can be applicable to any sort of CNC making. The first step is to be inspired, and that has nothing to do with software. Software can help you, a computer can help you, but you don't need that to be inspired. It's ideas in your mind, ideas in nature, ideas from other people, pen, pencil, sketch, whatever it is. Okay, that's that first step. Next, you need to externalize it, and then you need to iterate it. You need to externalize it. You need to get it out of your head. You need to get it off of the piece of paper into some sort of design. And initially, it could be pen and pencil, but now because we have the software, such as Onshape, we can create that 2D, 3D design, and we're also going to iterate, meaning we write something out, we CAD something up, computer-aided design, and then we see it, and then we change it. Just like thoughts on a paper, an essay, you're going to revise things. That's going to go through that iterative process. You might show it to other people. They're going to give you feedback. That's all in this step number 2. Step number 3 is we're going to take that design and we're going to translate it over into something that the machine can understand. And usually this piece, it's good to understand what that process is, but as a designer, you don't have to go through that. And then finally to execute, and that means the actual software, and it's often software custom made for the machine. That machine takes that information from the translated code and then makes it. All right, so for instance, giving examples here, Onshape is our tool to externalize and iterate our design. You translate it with something like Corel Draw or Adobe Illustrator. And then in the case of the Universal Laser System, it has its own software that will drive the machine to do whatever you have it to do. Okay, so now a bit more about CAD, and again, this is just sort of good overall background. Okay, everything has a computer-aided design before manufacturing. If you think of the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words, then you could say that a CAD model is worth 1,000 pictures. CAD can help us collaborate and plan. There are a lot of different tools, and what you might end up using in college or in a company, it may be different, or they might choose a particular one. So as long as you get the conceptual part right, you'll learn how to use the ins and the outs, the user interface and the menu. The 4 main things that Onshape is special, why Onshape is special is that it's cloud-based. Okay, you do need that internet connection, but it's not tied to a computer. It's collaborative. You can have many people working on a dock at a time. Collaborative, and then also the history, the version history that we talked about in the previous episode. You can take snapshots of certain versions of the design, and you can go back, or you can split up and then merge different aspects of it. And then lastly, it's continuously improving. Every 3 weeks, they push out new features to users. Okay, so Onshape is like these 4 things. So you can pause the video, sort of think based on your Onshape knowledge. How might you think Onshape is like these things? And then I'm going to tell you my perspective on it. All right, Onshape is like a toolbox, recipe, building, and a backpack. So Onshape is a toolbox because it has many ways to give form to your ideas. You have the actual CAD tool. You can also put in images, PDFs, videos. But the key thing actually for the toolbox is learning how to create sketches, create parts from those sketches, create assemblies, and then finally you have drawings that help you create your piece or sort of summarize. So it has many different ways to actually give form, okay, to draw and to create your ideas. Onshape is also like a recipe. So if you think back to our left-hand side, the feature list, Onshape is continually following, oh, you made a sketch, you made a new plane, you did some extrudes, you did some fillets. All of those things are commands that you are telling Onshape to then render or to generate in the main graphics view. Again, hopefully, after having watched the entirety of season one, this will make sense to you. Okay, Onshape is like a building. So we talked about this in the review last time. Okay, every time you're going between different menus, okay, editing a feature or editing the sketch or putting it in assembly, the menu changes. So it's like you're going between floors of a building. And really, I should add up here at the top, the drawing, all right, capital D drawing, is like the roof. It's a view of whatever you've made here. So as you're going through the different parts, a lot of times people get lost. Think back to this analogy. Okay, and then lastly, Onshape is like a backpack or a briefcase or a portfolio, whatever thing, I guess, piece of luggage that you relate to, because it contains all of the related information, whether PDFs, JPEGs, or images. Okay, there's that snapshot. Um, some computing reminders. Okay, it takes up a lot of battery, so you want to use your charger. You want to close out of all other tabs and windows. Okay, you got 50 tabs open. There are ways to save them, like as links, or just favorite them, or just close them out. Okay, I know people work differently, but it's good every now and then to close them out. And if you close them out, your Onshape will work better. Try to increase your brightness to a good amount, and then maximize the window. And also try borrowing a mouse because I feel like it's a lot easier. Um, yeah. Also, in terms of connectivity, you can reload the page if it doesn't work. You can turn your internet off and then back on. You can restart the browser. And of course, lastly, you can always restart your computer. And you should test to see if other people are having similar issues. All right, general tips. Okay. A lot of this is self explanatory. Feel free to pause. I'll just sort of read it out. Be patient. Don't give up. Okay. Anything for learning goes that way. There's a lot of in context help. All right. You remember seeing a lot of that. Not sure, just try, and then you can always undo. So it's okay. You're just exploring. Um, General computing reminders, look away from your screen occasionally. And then, as you've seen in this first season, the type of instruction that I have had you go through is to build habits by repetition. Um, and remember, you are giving instructions to the computer. Initially, it's okay if you don't have those dimensions, but if you have a sense of how big, how small, give it that number. So it makes it easier down the line. And the computer only does what you tell it to do. The computer does not do what you want it to do. What you want it to do is in your mind, and the challenge is learning how to communicate that. And you need to give it sufficient and specific information. When we're giving commands, you could think of a grammar class where you have verbs and direct objects and adjectives. The idea of ordering a pizza, right? When you order a pizza, that can mean so many different things. So you need to give it enough info as needed. And remember, you can always go back and modify. Okay. Yeah, and each action you command in Onshape is like using a tool or picking up a phone to say, hey, I want to extrude this thing. All right. Again, I'm sort of giving like conflicting advice, but yeah, sometimes you just got to start with the rough draft. Don't worry about the details. All right. But if you already know what scale you're working at, then you might as well put the dimension. Again, you can iterate. There are different versions. You should name things so that you don't just have 5 part 1s and 6 part 2s. And again, if you're not sure what to do, just try something and you can always undo, start over. All right, remember red is the color of error, orange is the color of assistance. Yeah, common beginner mistakes. You get a whole lot of red in your feature list, so that's not good. So make sure you delete those things or update them. If you pick up too many things, if you're selecting, all right, you can press the space bar to clear. We didn't talk about this about dimensions within a sketch, but there's a defined versus underdefined, so maybe that's good material for season 2 episodes. We talked about showing the constraints. Yeah. We didn't touch upon surfaces. We only extruded solids, but that's just something to keep in mind if Onshape accidentally makes a surface for you instead of a solid. Remember, as you're sketching, you can hold the Shift key, and you're saying, hey, Onshape, I don't want your help. You let go of that Shift key, it resumes giving you help. And then remember, if you want to extrude an area, it must be a closed boundary. So sometimes you forgot to make the last pair of points coincident, so you need to check that. Remember, we always talked about entering and exiting the sketch. Click that green check. and make sure you're at the right floor of Onshape. Save sketches often, and then show and hide those unnecessary elements. And then you can bring them back when you need. You got the help menu that was the top right corner. You click the question mark, it can open up an encyclopedia. The forums can be helpful too, although that can get very deep in the weeds. But feel free to look, feel free to Google. You can also send feedback to Onshape if you encounter issues. And just general problem solving, just try something, change something. You can always undo. Reread the definitions, go through examples, and of course, you can ask a friend, ask a teacher. One way as you learn is to always keep a list of how do I do blank, or is there an easier way to do blank? And then when you're trying to model something, try to break it down into steps. Oh, first I want to create a sketch, then I want to extrude, then I want to do a remove extrude to make a hole, and so on and so forth. Um, yeah, just a lot of different ways to do the same thing. Okay, this means we are truly at the end of the road. And so that is it. Thank you for following along in season one. We'll be back with season two in more specific lessons. And again, if you have questions or feedback, I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much.